Hi, everyone. I'm Selma Sabanovic. I'm an associate professor in informatics and cognitive science. And today I'm going to tell you about some work kind of following through this theme of intelligent machines and robots, but actually looking at it from the perspective of not how robots can perceive the world, but how humans might perceive and interact with robots. And this is work that I've been doing as the director of the R-House Human-Robot Interaction Lab with some of my collaborators, faculty collaborators here and across the world, as well as some of our wonderful students who I'm really, really pleased to be working with. So to give you some of an idea, we've all heard of these ideas of, oh, the robots are coming, they're going to be all around. I'm sure you've heard of robots that are going to be used in elder care, in services. In Japan, there's even a robot hotel manned only by androids and other kind of mobile robotic creatures. But one of the questions that we still don't understand very well is how are people actually going to be interacting with these technologies in everyday life? How are they going to perceive robots? So one of the things that we're looking at is taking social psychological theories that have to do with our perceptions of each other as well as our perceptions of artifacts and seeing how does that work in the context of human-robot interaction in real-world tasks. Another question that comes up in this domain is how do we actually design and evaluate robots? And for this, we've been doing lots of field studies, so taking robots out of the lab and into the world to see what actually happens. One of the things that we've noticed in this case is that when robots are in the real world, you actually see that people do a lot of the work of supporting their autonomy. So they're not just autonomous by themselves. And so what we've been wanting to do is to get people more involved in the design of robots with us. So I'm just going to give you a few examples of different studies that we've done in terms of the social perception of robots. Some of the things that we're particularly interested in, we've been interested in kind of how people might respond to simple robots, like the little robot face that you see on one side and these robotic trash cans. And a lot of human-robot interaction research is focused on one-on-one interaction. But what we know when we put robots outside, and what we know from ourselves as well, is that we often don't interact just one-on-one. We interact with groups of people, as groups of people, and with groups of robots. So some of the research we've been doing, and the NSF has been very kind to fund this now through the Cyber Human Systems group, is to look at how these group interactions actually work between humans and robots. One of the things that happens in these cases is that with humans, we often see that intergroup interaction is actually more aggressive. If you think that somebody's an outgroup, you might think of them more negatively. And so what we're also looking at is how we can kind of get the robots to interact with each other and with people so that these negative interactions and attitudes don't happen. Another side that I mentioned is looking at humans and robots in the real world. And through this, we've been trying to actually do the design not just in the lab and then show people something as an evaluation, but actually doing very kind of quick prototyping and iterative studies of things like that little robot that we put in people's offices, as well as that's the robot face with some people in a museum. I'm going to show you, but you can't hear it. It's okay. So we basically put the robot face in the museum and we wanted to see what kind of emergent interactions happen. And some of the things that we saw is even though the robot was very simple and all it could do was just notice a person's face and kind of respond by smiling when there was a person there, and when they left it would frown. People would do all kinds of things like feed it, call it their baby. There were people who told it their problems, and they didn't really need a lot of prompting to do this. We want to continue studying these kind of natural patterns of interaction. Robotics has also been very interested in helping with different kind of societal issues, particularly elder care has been one. So we've also looked at the use of elder care robots, in this case, Paro, which is a robotic seal that was developed in Japan. And we've been looking at not necessarily the development of the robot because it's already there as a commercial artifact, but actually at how people appropriate and adopt the robot in their institutions. And we've looked at some elder care institutions. I've looked at some in Japan. We've also looked at some local institutions. And some of the things that we've noticed from putting the robot into the elder care facility and actually just observing what people do with it is really the importance of human labor that enables the autonomy. So often when we think of robots, we think, oh, it's great, these machines are going to do things by themselves. We just put it there and it works. Well, actually, no. We found that people, unless you introduce the robot appropriately, unless there's somebody there to scaffold how that robot works, people ignore the robot most often. So some of the things that we've seen as social factors that are important in terms of adoption is how people introduce the robot. If there's somebody around the robot who actually kind of attracts you to go up and look at it or play with it. We've seen gender differences in how people approach the robot. With this one, maybe you can imagine women actually approach it more than men. And we've also looked at how the relationships between different people in the organization, the staff, the managers, et cetera, fit into the organizational adoption. And so finally, since people are so important for the success of autonomous machines, what we've been doing recently is trying to work more on figuring out how to co-design or collaboratively design robotic technologies with people who might be using them. So we've been particularly focusing, we've done some work with one of my students with householders to think about how they might want to experience domestic robots. And here in Bloomington, we've been working with Centerstone, which is a big mental health facility, to think about how they might use socially assistive robotic technologies with independently living older adults with depression. And we've been working with clinicians as well as older adults to kind of think through ideas to show them robotic technology and how it works, and then get their expert feedback on how this might actually fit into their daily lives. So that's kind of a quick description of what we do in our house lab, and I'm happy to talk to you more afterwards. Thank you.